Transaction rollback continues to gain a lot of popularity here, and there's nothing like watching a grown man cry on the internet about "stop playing Tier Elements." Well, I mean, that's the format we're about to look at. Let's dig on into this. Don't big 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out more awesome content. We have a metagame report here we're going to be looking at, and we're going to be looking at this week's Next Play tournament, where we got the chance to kind of see some interesting stuff kind of shaping out here. So now remember, this is all pre-Age of Overlord. We don't have that set yet, but highest represented deck for their new format, guess what? It's Tier Elements. Considering the fact, you know, they have Chaos Ruler, all Fairy Tales, so all of this other insanity that, you know, they've been having for quite some time, and that it's continuing on as a dominant force, I'm not that surprised. Interestingly enough, Branded is following it up with second place representation. Now remember, Branded Fusion's at 1, the Bysteals are limited to 1. They have so many heavier restrictions on the deck there. So to see, you know, that we're pushing that heavily, I find that kind of interesting. Rescue Ace and Labyrinth tied at 10.53%. I mean, Rescue Ace has been very interesting, but there's this transaction rollback problem that's starting to kind of develop right now, where transaction rollback with Labyrinth is kind of starting to turn into something pretty toxic at the end of the day. Now, for the rest of the representation here, I mean, Purely still kind of holding on. The hit to Purely actually did kind of matter enough to kind of systematically shut the deck down a little bit. And then we have a pretty big drop down here to Dinosaurs with only 3 tops this week. And now, your 2 ofs and 1 ups here. You had 2 Unchained, 2 Swordsel, 2 Adamantipator, 2 Cybers, 2 Hero, 2 Synchron, good stuff. And then your 1 ups are Mathmech, Runic, Exosister, Super Heavy, Dragon, good stuff, Pendulum, Tri-Brigade, Sky Striker, Shaddoll, Red Dragon, Archfiend, Draco Slayer, Pendulum, Evil Eye, Chimera, Valance, and Phantom Knight. So you have a very strong push, you know, through the multitudes of different decks here that are available. So, I mean, with diversity, I mean, obviously opens up some pretty interesting things. Now, the top cut, or the actual breakdown for this week's tournament, Labyrinth had 5 in placement here. Actually, 5 showed up to play, which actually isn't terrible. Considering the fact that Labyrinth, once again, I mean, we're seeing transaction rollback in this deck, it's turning into a pretty interesting creature. And then Rescue Ace here had 4 versions actually showing up and seeing play, which is kind of interesting at the overall end of the day here, that you are seeing Rescue Ace still maintain this very strong presence. Like, the deck is very consistent for what it is. It is an absolute monster watching it do its thing. Now, we also had 3 Purely decks show up and play, which, I mean, I'm not that surprised. We also had 2 good old Tier Elements. Oh, man. Tier Elements being one of those mainstream, you know, top contenders. And then we had 2 Dinosaur. It's kind of interesting to see Dinosaur kind of edging things out a little bit more here. Now, personally, I think this is where things start to get interesting. It's always the 1 of section, because any of these rogue decks, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has done a fantastic job at allowing these decks to kind of keep up. And, you know, it really depends on what we're going to see be successful per every tournament. But we had Adding Nestor, Exosister, Branded, Sky Striker, it looks like Sword Soul, Tri-Brigade, Dragon Maid, that's kind of cool, Naturia, I don't know what that one is. Then we have Pendulum, looks like Minkanko, Burn, well, that's cool, Unchained, Rika, Super Heavy, Vanquish Soul, Dogmatica, and Manadium. I mean, most of these are your standard current metagame contenders. I mean, most of these have had a chance to do well, though that Burn deck is kind of interesting. I actually hope that that Burn deck actually had a chance to actually be successful out here, because that, if you're taking Burn to an event, you are absolutely crazy. Now, top 8 for this event, you're going to notice that this pie chart has dramatically warped. All right, like, this isn't, I mean, you can tell who your top metagame contenders are at this point. We had 2 Labyrinth players in the top cut of this event, which, I mean, once again, is not all that surprising, but once again, I keep mentioning transaction rollback. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. We also had 2 Tier Elements, and earlier I said, you know, it's funny watching all these people scream to the top of their lungs, going, change your metagame. No, you don't have to. All right, they have like 5 good cards that actually make this deck a relevant contender. It's why they continue to play it. All right, I would try to play the best deck too. All right, like, it's not like you're playing in the metagame. It's not like there has to be, a surefire change to that. I found that very interesting, that as much as people do want to see a change, people are still going to play the best deck. That's just how it is. We also had 2 Purely over here. Actually, Purely ended up winning this week's Next Play event, which, once again, I'm not all that surprised. And then we have Rescue Ace over here, bringing it on home as well. And I mean, Rescue Ace has quite a grind here between all of the cute little things that it has to deal with. But am I surprised by the metagame here? No, not at all. I mean, all of these decks have pretty much edged themselves out as the top contender here. It is nice to have a relevant back row. I mean, the ceiling on tier elements might be a little bit more than most people want to deal with at the moment, and I get that. I understand that. Purely, I mean, set up a boss monster and go, and then, Rescue Ace works on the same premise as Labyrinth. You just go ahead and set a bunch of spells and traps, look at your opponent and go, well, I hope you have some sort of out to that, because if you don't, you're just going to get swept away by, the tide of absolute defeat. So, all right, so top deck list out of this event here. We first off look at Purely, and, all real things considered, Purely still continues to be a pretty straightforward cutout deck, I feel like. I feel like most of the power that you get with this deck still pretty much does its thing at this point in time. Double Desires, triple Purely Leap. I feel like having to play triple Leap is just kind of, the overall actions of the format kind of talking here. As much as we do want to see, maybe some sort of change out of the format block here, I don't think it's actually going to happen. So, very, very interesting to see, this deck's still kind of doing its thing here. But honestly, what more do you really want to see change? What more can we kind of add into this deck to try to spice it up? Because I feel like this deck has enough going for it that it doesn't really have to adapt. It doesn't really have to change, anything too crazy. It's good to go. Next up here, we have our Labyrinth deck. Now, this is what I was talking about with good old transaction rollback here. I see that our trap lineup is very interesting, because we get transaction rollback. Are we just looping like a pointer of the Red Lotus or something like that? Or, like the big Welcome Labyrinth here. I see we're also playing Red Dragon Archfiend cards in here as well. Like, this, to me, this feels very interesting, because, like, we can use the Resonator stuff to use as stepping stones. I see we're playing Tackle Crusader here as well. This is a very innovative approach to the deck. I didn't think we would see anybody really trying to test out or push a variant change like this onto anybody. So yeah, this is kind of interesting just to see the ideas and things that a build like this is kind of bringing to the table. So good stuff. Definitely one of the crazier little things out here to really see. And then we have tier elements. Now, how many band cards can you put in a deck? Obviously, Glow Bulb, Chaos Ruler, Fairy Tale Snow. All of these cards are what make this deck what it is at this point in time. And whether or not we really do like how good or how powerful that this is, it is very strong. I also see this build is playing a That Grass Looks Greener down here, which is hilarious, by the way. You mean to tell me that this build has gotten away with playing 41 cards and tacking in a copy of Grass? Well, yes, as long as your opponent, thins down enough cards, you can slap down Grass, go ahead and get some extra mill power here, and you're kind of off to the races. I didn't think that we would see something like that. It's also a giant Ash target, to be honest with you. Like, if you want to bait an Ash before you, go off, full combo, I find that to be a wee little bit interesting. So, very interesting just kind of see the composition here of that coming together. And then our last list here is our Rescue Ace deck. It actually managed to make top 4 here. Now, Rescue Ace, like I said, it's all about setting 4 cards, setting up and going. And then you protect your Turbulence and your whole investment. Now, if the field kind of breaks down, there's not much you can really do about that. Honestly, that's kind of the Rescue Ace experience. It's not like it's crazy, amazing, but it's good enough that, you sit up and you can play the game. So that is our overall breakdown. So much information for this video as to how things are going right now. So please, leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later today, and you guys stay safe out there, alright? Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.